Turn up the dive, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I memorize. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild memorize. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Paranormal Spectrum here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones from Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. We got a great show here for you today, and we are live. That's right, Lee Warner. Happy Thursday to everyone. Hope everyone is having an excellent day. Lee says, good morning, Flat Rockland as well, and welcome to the show. Keep in mind, if you have questions or comments throughout the show, throw them in the comments section on your chosen platform where you are watching us. We will get to them as soon as we can. All right, guys, it is October, and you know what that means. It is spooky season, and we are doing paranormal investigations of Wisconsin's premier haunted gentlemen's club. This building has been in existence for over 100 years. One of the town's original buildings in Mackville, Wisconsin. It served as the original post office, blacksmith shop, dance hall, and bar, tavern, and general store. So it has quite a long history. It has 4 recorded tragic deaths in the building, as well as 2 fires. The building was passed down for 4 generations before finally being sold in 1993 outside of the family to its current owners, Bean Snappers. So guys, we are doing public and private tours of the Gentlemen's Club. If you'd like to come out and investigate with the team, tickets are going fast now. Almost all of our Sundays have been sold. We still have a few on there, also available Mondays and Tuesdays when the club is closed, but private investigations for your team are available as well. So if you'd like to come out and investigate one of the most haunted locations that the CAPS team has investigated, head on over to hauntedbeansnappers.com and check it all out. Then, guys, if you're looking for even more spooky stuff, we are going to be at the Shawano County Library on October 16th, the Brownsville Public Library on October 22nd, and the Neenah Public Library on October 25th. All of these presentations are exploring the paranormal. We are going to talk to you about all things paranormal, how to safely do an investigation, the different types of hauntings, and how to properly use your paranormal equipment. After these presentations, we are going to be doing live investigations of the libraries. So it is the Shawano Library and the Brownsville Library have both expressed to me different areas of the building that actually have had paranormal activity. So they are actually haunted. The Neenah Public Library, I don't know yet. We're going to have to find out. So if you guys want more information, head to wisconsincaps.com and click on the public events tab. That's it for this year. Coming up next year, Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and CapCon in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, May 8th and 9th. So more information as we get closer on that. But we are live. Welcome, Grandizer, as well to the show. Thank you for tuning in. If you guys have comments, get them in the comment section, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to introduce our guest for today's show. All right, guys, my guest today is Robert Galvin. He is a paranormal researcher, a ghost hunter, Cryptid and Swedenborg enthusiast. He helps with the podcast Channeling Chavez and recently volunteered for the IANDS convention on NDEs. We'll have to get into that. He got into paranormal at a young age, listening to Coast AM and reading Tales of the Cryptids from his local library. Please welcome to the show, Robert. Robert, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. So let's start with how did you get into this? Like what all do? You do the paranormal research, you're a researcher in general. What got you started in all this?
So it was kind of a gradual thing, but it did immediately begin with Coast to Coast AM. My father would actually listen to it every night when it'd help him go to sleep, And I just found the topics that would be presented on them so fascinating. Now I grew up more with George Norrie because he kind of took over once Art Bell left, so that was kind of when I started listening to it. But they would have what was that block where they'd show Art Bell Somewhere in Time, I think it was called. So I'd hear reruns of Art Bell's show, and man, I mean, I actually think both are great interviewers. But I really like the Art Bell episodes; those were always so fascinating to me. What was it, John Teeter, the time traveler? There are just so many good episodes that he's done. And then eventually, I got into like Bigfoot. I got into all these obscure cryptids. And what really helped me with that was my local library. I was a kid at the time. In the children's section, they actually had some cryptid books for kids, and one of them was Tales of the Cryptids. And man, I rented that out of the library so many times. I think my parents paid late fees on it actually a few times. But I was so fascinated by all these like weird animals, Mokele and Mbembe, De'emela Natuka. And I was like, what are these things? Like, are these real? Are they, because I know the coelacanth, that's the famous story, right? Where, we weren't sure if it existed or not, or excuse me, I should say it was in the fossil record. And then just one day out of the blue, a fisherman finds it. And it's just really exciting to look at like the Loch Ness Monster, Lake Champlain, and all these cryptids and think like, is there a chance there's something actually out there? Something that's a bit more fantastical. I mean, even the platypus, that was a very extravagant and bizarre looking animal. And no one believed when it was reported that it existed. They thought it was mythology until they actually found some alive. I mean, if you described to someone like a mammal that had a duckbill and laid eggs and the males had like venom that they'd prick each other with, no one would believe you until you actually found it. So that was kind of what got my start into the paranormal. But the ghost hunting didn't happen until, I'd say it started almost 10 years ago now. But it didn't really get going until like 4 years ago with my friend Mike and then Jack Chavez, who I work with on the podcast now.
Awesome. Hopefully my listeners are very familiar with Jack. He's been on the show multiple times. We talk about the Chicago Paranormal Convention on here, and he'll probably be back on in around June when his convention is. So
Right. Actually,
Yeah.
his next one's on my birthday, so
His horror one, right?
yeah, it's actually
June.
it's his paranormal convention is on my birthday.
Okay.
I should specify. That is right.
Okay.
He is doing another one soon.
Yeah. I haven't. He hasn't said anything about it because I'm not at that one. So
Oh,
he
that's
doesn't.
unfortunate.
He doesn't even invite me to the paranormal conventions anymore. He just sends me the date and assumes that I'll show up. That's where we're at now.
Well,
And I'm like,
whatever else you got going on,
convention.
you got to bail, man. You got to be there. He's expecting you. You're just the default. You have to be there.
That's pretty much what he says too. Yeah. So,
All right. Well, I'll see you June 13th then. So,
is it? Oh, well, I should probably write that down. Yeah, he hasn't given me the date yet, so I should probably make sure that's on the calendar before anything else sneaks into that spot. So, yeah. All right.
that's awesome.
We'll keep that in there. But, yeah. Have you heard anything about the HorrorCon he was going to start?
So I know he's still planning, but I don't think for this year. I know it fell through because there was actually another horror and oddities show happening at the same time, and a lot of the vendors were going to that one, and he didn't want to also compete. So he doesn't like to compete with other people, So he had to reschedule that one. But I know he's planning. He's got a bunch planned next year. I don't know if I could talk about all of them, but I know one idea is a vampire ball. That one he's pretty enthusiastic about. So, but again, I don't know how much of these I can talk about. So
Yeah, probably shouldn't. He'll get mad.
yeah.
But no, like I said, I heard that he was doing the HorrorCon, but then I never heard a date or anything, and I haven't seen anything. So I was like, wonder what happened with that. So
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Awesome. Well, so let me ask you this, because this is what kind of happened to me. I was always into cryptids, kind of the same thing as that, and I fell under this impression that cryptids were, somewhere out there in the great beyond. They weren't here in Wisconsin or, Illinois or, my own backyard. And because of that, I started researching the paranormal and getting into that because it was right here. Now, is that the same kind of how your transition happened, or why did you get into the paranormal off of cryptids?
Well, it kind of was two things that were separate interests that kind of merged over the years. Like I did like, ghosts. I was interested in them. I remember reading books in middle school about them, but I was more so a cryptid guy because I loved monster movies like Beast in 20,000 Fathoms, Godzilla. I liked the monster stuff, but I never actually combined them until, again, like the past few years, you just start reading reports. What's the famous Pennsylvanian Bigfoot case where it has the orb? I forget the name of that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
The one where it's like an orb, it's by a fence. There's a UFO involved with that case.
No.
There were just like, yeah, there were just some weird stories like that about Bigfoot. And I was like, that's weird. There's actually a really good documentary called Paranormal Bigfoot. What's it like? I think Beauty's in the title. Jack would know what it is. And I mean, there's footage of this like invisible looking thing jumping through the forest. And it's like predators, what it looks like. And it's like the more you look into Sasquatch, the more you look into all these different, things, UFOs, aliens, I guess you would call it UAPs now. It does seem like there's some thread connecting all of them, especially because, again, with the near-death conference, there's some people that report aliens even in their NDEs. So now that's a connection with that. So it does seem like all of these paranormal topics are actually connected by a thread. It's just hard to kind of pinpoint it all together. And it seems like a lot of religions around the world are kind of like people's ways of interpreting them, bringing them together. But yeah, I would say it's semi-similar to yours. It's just more of a recent acceptance, like the Quantum Bigfoot, that book, like it's more of a recent acceptance for me to accept that like these things are all connected. Because, growing up, when I saw Bigfoot, I always believed, and it still could be a flesh and blood animal, right? I mean, there's a lot of casts, hair that's been found. There's definitely a physicality to it. But I mean, the idea of it actually being more of like an interdimensional being, I'm a little more open to that now than I was. Like if you asked me even 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said no, it has to be physical or bust. Now I'm a little more like, I don't know. It's hard to say with some of the witnesses and what they've encountered.
You're talking about the Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot?
Flash of Beauty, that's the one. Yeah.
We've had Brent on the show here and to talk about that as well. So yeah, people can go check that out. There's two of them. There's a Flash of Beauty, and then there's a Flash of Beauty, the Paranormal Bigfoot. So shout out to those guys. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I think that like you said, Bigfoot is very flesh and blood. It is a creature of some sort, but I think the jury is still out as to, is it always here, or is it, like you said, aliens, the little grays and stuff are very flesh and blood as well when they interact with us. But then at the same time, those things can walk through walls and do all this other stuff. And so I think that, when they're here, they're obviously flesh and blood, but maybe not always. So interesting. I want to come back because we kind of touched on this, the near death experience convention. So the IAND, what is that for first of all?
So the IANDS conference is about like NDEs, near death experiences, and I think it was founded by Raymond Moody, the famous guy who wrote Life After Life, and he was the guy who coined the term NDE, near death experience. I think it was in reference to Thomas Jefferson, something he said, either at Jefferson or Edison. And it's about people who pass on. They die from some sort of tragedy, car accident, what have you, and then they come back from being dead, and then they share their experiences. A lot of them are religious, spiritual. A good chunk of them, they see like Jesus or Mary. Sometimes they'll see other deities, but usually it's those. It's more Christian. But that could also be because, there's tons of Christian content on YouTube. There's a big drive for that now in the West. So I could see that having some influence as to why we don't really hear about other NDEs. It's also, I know for like a lot of Muslim communities, they can't really talk about NDEs too much. But I did meet someone at the IANDS conference who knows someone who's writing a book about Muslim NDEs. So that's going to be coming out soon. But yeah, so the conference is just about that. People sharing their experiences. And most of the attendees had NDEs themselves, or at least know someone who has. And I went to a ton of different presentations of people who either researched NDEs thoroughly or they had experiences themselves. And the ones that actually had experiences were the really interesting to me. Well, actually, there were two that were the most interesting. One was a guy who he actually moved to Japan, and he lived there. And he would brag about how he actually became more fluent in Japanese than a lot of the Japanese people he lived with, and they were impressed by him. He really liked Japanese culture. But eventually he kind of toyed with his job that he had out there because he got into near-death experiences. And, he talked about how like Buddhists for well over a century, they actually documented, they didn't call them NDEs, but they documented people that passed and then came back. So there's at least 1,000 years of history with that just under Buddhism. So he went over like that history, and many of the stories echo what all these other people at the conference are talking about today. Like people that are alive today that have had these experiences, it matches people 1,000 years ago, what they had. I mean, obviously the technology is different, right? But otherwise, what they describe in the afterlife is still kind of similar. I recall one story where this guy went to, he obviously passed, and he saw this old man. And the old man was like shouting out to him, and he was hiding behind a rock and then a tree. And the guy's like, "No, come out, come out." And he goes to greet this guy, and the guy's giving him a tough time. He says, "No, you can't be here. You can't be here. You have to go back." And the guy eventually returns to his body. And when he describes what he saw, his family members all knew who he was talking about, with like the raspy voice, with his facial features. He was clearly talking about an uncle that he had. And when they pulled out a picture of his uncle that he'd never seen previously, he recognized like that's the guy I saw. And, then you have like a modern story that we were just told at the conference where this one lady, she was with her mother, and on the deathbed, the mother said, you know, I actually had an affair. You're actually not your father's child. And this was after this lady had an NDE and saw someone in it. And it turned out that it was some Jewish man that his mom had slept with. And that man was the same guy she saw in her NDE. And there's no way, I mean, it was a deathbed confession. There's no way that lady could have known that that was her father. So, you know, these are like centuries apart, and they're describing the same kind of experiences. So that's kind of the gist of what the conference is about. It's about those people that went through those experiences and sharing their stories with everyone, just to kind of figure out what's going on there.
It's fascinating. I'm very interested in like the NDEs and stuff like that, because like you said, they're all very similar. You know, people experience the same things, having these out of body experiences, floating over themselves sometimes, seeing things that they shouldn't be able to see and remember.
Yeah.
And, you know, it goes back to the whole, well, if they're making this up, why are so many able to do it? Why are all of these stories from all over the world, you know, so very similar, so much in sync with each other that they, you know, they can't be all BS. You know, it's just fascinating that there's gotta be something else out there beyond this. So.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be. I mean, again, like centuries apart, these stories still have echoes of each other, no matter the culture, no matter the religion, no matter the ethnicity. All of these people around the world report similar things in the afterlife. Even the OBEs, which that's what it's called when they pass, but they don't see like Jesus or aliens or anything. They just see their body when they like had just passed. That's a out of body experience. And I know there's also a third name for that term. I forget what it is, but I know there's a third version of that too. But yeah, and there's many stories like that out there. Any hospital you go to, you could ask the staff. I'm sure they'll have one or two stories about that if you really ask the right people. I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. It's common knowledge at this point that this is something that happens. It's just, I know there's been scientists that have said they haven't been able to recreate the data, but I mean, I suspect that's because it's hard to recreate something like that. That's such a specific experience, you know? You can't really, you know, fire that lightning off. You know what I mean? Like that's like such a specific experience happening.
I think, now you can correct me if you're wrong, maybe you've done more research into this than I have, but haven't there been some experience or experiments where people have been like coma deathed on purpose to try and initiate these near-death experiences?
Well, I'm not sure familiar with that one. I'm more familiar with like the God helmet, which was something similar to that, where like they would try to get rid of your senses and try to, and actually that one did work, I know for sure, where they actually did experience some almost otherworldly. Like I know they'd see like butterflies, they'd see like them flying through the sky, they'd see some crazy stuff with that. So I know about that, but I'm not sure about the comatose ones. I mean, that would make sense to me though, because I mean, obviously you can't kill people for an experiment.
Yeah.
But
I remember something along those lines where they would stop someone's heart or put them into a deep coma to kill them without you know, being able to bring them back right away to see if they could initiate those experiments or the experiences. I mean, so I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. That reminds me of what was that movie? Is it Flatliners? Is that the one? There's like one movie, yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. But I know more of the God helmet. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, there's so many fascinating stories out there though that just all relate to each other. I mean, it's kind of strange because these NDEs, it's almost like a cartoonish afterlife that they suggest. Like it's like the happy ending that you didn't know you were getting. Like you're born into this like materialistic world. You know, it's all depressing and there's all these horrible things. There's like insect parasites that eat your eyes out, and it's like oh my. And then to hear that the afterlife is actually the complete opposite. Like there's actually beauty, everything's beautiful, you feel love, You feel, that there's cities, there's according to some people, such as Swedenborg, there's some sort of marriage. It's different than marriage on Earth. It's like, it sounds way too good to be true, like way too good. But there's so many people that repeat the same things. It's really hard to discount it. And I know a lot of people have tried discounting it as like, what is it, like, what's the drug? There's like a chemical that releases in your brain when you die. So they've tried explaining it away as hallucinations. But I don't think that's what it is. Like the OBEs, they explain stuff. Like they'll see things there's no way they could have known. Like there was one story I read in a book where this lady levitated outside of the building, the hospital, and she saw a pair of shoes on the ceiling or on the roof. And when she came back, she told the doctors that she saw that pair of shoes. And they just to humor her, they went up there and they found that exact pair of shoes that she described. How would you have faked that? I mean, what would she throw that pair up there herself? And this was a tall building too. So what? Okay, she threw them up there herself and knew she was going to die. It doesn't make sense. So there's just so many cases like that. And then a lot of the experiences where they see, entities like Jesus or beings of light, or a lot of atheists will call it like the source, this like beaming ethereal sun. It's like, it's too much to say there's nothing actually going on, that it's just chemicals in the brain that are being released that's causing you to see these hallucinations.
Now you've brought him up here, and it's in the title of the show here, this Swedenborg, because you call yourself an enthusiast, and we've talked in person about this before, and but I didn't know anything about this, to be honest. Just kind of like in passing what we had mentioned in that. So I've kind of dove into this recently to try and prepare for this and see where we're going. And it started out with a very simple 18-minute podcast about the gentleman. And I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. Okay. And then I started getting into some other podcasts and went, there's a lot more here. Everything I don't know where all this is going here, but there's everything from, the whole religion based around his life. He was an inventor. He was very, I listened to an entire podcast about him basically not being abducted by aliens, but them thinking that he had this alien abduction encounter. So with all that being said, let's, in your words, let's give a brief who is this guy and why is he important?
So Emanuel Swedenborg was a 18th century mystic, I should say Christian mystic actually, who he mastered the sciences at 56. Like he's considered one of the last people who actually mastered every single form of science. He grew up Lutheran. His father, Jesper Swedenborg, was a Lutheran bishop for the Swedish court. And later on, he became nobility to the king. And, actually, Jesper Swedenborg himself was an interesting man that we could even talk about. He even had the same experiences as Swedenborg did. He claimed angels and demons were interacting with us every day. He claimed to actually be able to talk to them, see them. He said they saved his life more than once. But, I think a lot of what Jesper went through really impacted what Swedenborg went through. It was kind of the predecessor. And also Jesper Swedenborg's interest with the Pietist movement, I think, had a strong influence on Swedenborg as well. Because Jesper was more into, he believed that Lutherans were too encompassed with brain rather than heart. That they were kind of missing a lot of the points. Like they understood the theology really well, the rules, but they didn't understand the heart of the messages that Jesus and, the Bible was talking about. But whereas Jesper looked at the Bible more like literally, more like the Bible is the truth, Swedenborg questioned it. He examined it, studied it, and questioned it. And he thought there was deeper meanings. But this, of course, it didn't happen until way later in life. I think he was like 54 or something. It wasn't until later in life that he actually had extreme supernatural experiences. But like as a kid growing up, he lost his mother when he was 8 years old. He was the third of 9 children, and his stepmother loved him actually more than his other kids. And he eventually got the Board of Mines from his stepmom, and he worked in mining for a long, long time as the head of it. He helped the king with a war, traveling ships across miles and miles of terrain, and I mean over the land, not the sea. And he mastered a lot of the sciences, which again kind of put a divide between him and his father, because his father was super religious and thought he was going to be a prodigy. And eventually, Swedenborg, once he mastered all the sciences, he started getting into human anatomy and then philosophy. And he was like, what is the soul? Like, what is the soul? He wanted to discover what the soul was. So this actually led to him finding out a lot of discoveries about the human brain. Through later translations, a lot of people found out he actually discovered a lot more things about the brain than we realized. But eventually, one day he was sitting in his room, and he had like a dish, just a meal, made for him. And he started eating it, and then he started choking. And then he saw a guy, very thin man, sitting in a chair across from him. And he said, don't eat so much. And as Swedenborg was looking down, he saw like toads and snakes, traversing the ground under him. And he flipped out and then got out of there. He ran to the streets of, I think it was London. And then eventually he met up with the same man again. And that's when the man approached him. He said, I'm Jesus Christ. I'm the Lord. And, I need you to essentially deliver a message about the Bible. Set the record straight, basically. He goes into how apparently there was, in Revelation, it talks about how there was there was an additional part to Revelation that was kept out. I forget the actual part in Revelation, but there's a part that actually says there was going to be a future thing revealed, and Swedenborg claimed to be a part of that. Now, even though he said he's not a prophet and he's not a philosopher, he was pretty much exactly those things. But where it gets interesting is, I think a lot of people, when they look at Swedenborg, they kind of see him as like the base for a worldview, kind of like how a lot of Christians, when they look at like the Bible, that's their base, like Swedenborg's father, that's the base for their worldview. And then everything else just kind of fits into that worldview. But I really think at least when I look at Swedenborg, I view it from an opposite angle, where I see him as like the ultimate near-death experiencer. Now, I don't know what he experienced. I don't know what he saw. But, I slowly became convinced when I started reading his work that he actually experienced something. He wasn't just lying. Because there's actually this set of books called the Spiritual Diary that the Swedenborg Foundation released. And it's works that were never supposed to be published by him. And it was just his personal diary. So a lot of it was just kind of boring stuff, to be honest. But there were parts where you could actually see he started having spiritual experiences. Like there was one where he saw a fly, and he said he was deeply disturbed or disgusted by it. And I view that, and I know other Swedenborgians have viewed it as like kind of like a mic test, like check, check, check. Like it's trying to figure out, like it's testing the waters for Swedenborg, trying to like test out the experiences before they give him the revelation, right, or what they want to tell him. And then eventually that led into the Jesus experience. And then that led into him actually traversing heaven and hell, which is where his big book came into place, which is Heaven and Its Wonders and Hell. And that was his most famous book, besides his, I think it's like an 8 or 12 volume set, Arcana Celestia, which is his interpretation of Genesis and Exodus. But I know this is a lot. There's a lot of jumping around with Swedenborg, because there's so much. I mean, you already said it. There's so much to this guy. It's actually crazy. Because I mean, at face value, he's just another Christian mystic guy. But then you start digging into it, and it's like, oh my God, like there is so much more to this guy than you initially think. But yeah, in Arcana Celestia, for example, again, it's like talking about Genesis and Exodus, and you think it's just a commentary, right? Okay, that makes sense. No, you read it. He talks about aliens in it. He talks about speaking to like Moses and Abraham. He obviously Jesus, and then halfway through that set, he says he has a new revelation. The true revelation, or the second coming of Christ, is happening in, what was it, 17? I forget the exact year, but in the 1700s. He's like 1747, something like that. He's like, this is when Jesus actually is coming back, but it's a spiritual comeback. It's in heaven, and that second temple has been built in heaven, and I don't know. This is what he claims right in the middle of Arcana Celestia. And then earlier on, he talks about Satan as an entity, where he capitalizes it. And then later on, he talks about Satan as Satan's not a real entity. It's more of a collective of, I don't want to say sinners. That's not accurate. But like people that choose to go to hell and become demons. So I guess what I'm getting at with all this is Swedenborg kind of changes his views on things. Another one last example. He hated Paul. We know he hated the Apostle Paul from his spiritual diary. He said he was colluding with demons. But on his deathbed, Swedenborg actually said he was okay with Paul. Paul was actually a cool guy. It's just it was not divinely inspired, Paul's writings. It was just explanation. It wasn't from God. So when I look at Swedenborg, I don't think he's like the end all of everything. He's just like a little spyglass you're looking through into a much more grand, universe or world. I mean, he was a Tesla kind of character with how smart he was. So whatever's happening in the afterlife, he's got probably the best answer. It's just, it's not a complete answer. It's still a small snippet compared to what actually is. So that's kind of how I view him versus like other. I don't know if I call myself Swedenborgian, but again, enthusiast, I think is fair.
No, absolutely, and I think you kind of put a nice little wrap around all that to get a gist of him. But there's so much going on there. Like this is, I listened to several different podcasts and looked up some stuff on that, and I didn't find too much that overlapped. There's that much stuff out there about this and that.
It's very
and I
dense.
think yeah. He starts off more as like a Da Vinci kind of, where he's, like you said, very into science. He was an inventor. He was, again, compared to like Tesla, very ahead of his time, very intelligent, smart. He said he worked in the mining industry, working on all that stuff. So, but then there's this like shift where he goes from that to he takes like 10 years off from writing, they said, and he goes into trying to figure out the anatomy and the soul and where that actually fits in. And that's when this whole other stuff starts kind of going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place with Swedenborg. Like it's hard. I don't know if it sounded like I was just rambling nonsense, but it's really hard to concisely describe him, or at least I should say his views, because it's so vast. I mean, I haven't even gotten to how the correspondences yet, how he views everything as like there's a correspondence to every image, to every word, to everything. Now he specifies that with the Bible, but I do suspect he is talking about like actual life around us as well, where like a turtle can symbolize one thing. Like there's an experience he had, I think it was in heaven, in his work True Christianity, which was one of his last works, and he described seeing like a two-headed turtle right next to a boat, and it was like licking the hands and feet of kids that were like just saying hi to the turtle or whatever. And he one of the turtle's heads was like humanoid, and it had a red hat or something on, and then the other was like just a normal turtle, and it would go, they could go in and out. And yeah, I don't know if you guessed it already what the correspondence of that is, but it's what is it, that someone who was born into the clergy that has like two different faces. They're able to have their religious side and then their human side. So I don't know how he got that, but smart man. He was able to understand that, because I don't know anyone else who would. So yeah. But
I've heard a lot about his dream journal and how there was a lot of other things in there. Like he talked about that God knows all the sins in your head, right? So you could
Right.
sin in your brain, in your dreams, but as long as you didn't do it in the waking physical world, it wasn't necessarily a sin. And there's a lot of that
Yeah.
in his journal, without getting into some of the weirder things in his journal that he describes and stuff. But it's like he kind of explores that in the dream world.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's in his famous work Heaven and Hell, he describes how people have they have two angels inside of them and two demons. Now, I guess I should preface, according to Swedenborg, and this is actually kind of unique for theology, he believes that angels and demons, all of them, were once human. So he says when people die, they go into the spirit world, which is around us in the material world, and we get to choose if we want to go to heaven or go to hell. And there's an angel that kind of guides us. And he says the time limit for being in that world is like 30 years. So I don't know if that makes sense according to like ghost encounters at haunted houses. I don't think so. But that's his claim, is like that there's a 30-year cap on deciding if you want to go to heaven or hell. But then once you pick one of them, you feel at home there. You become a being of light. Well, if you go to heaven, you become a being of light. And there's a lot of different jobs and different opportunities you have in heaven and even in hell. But eventually, there's one job you could have where you actually go inside of a living person in the material world. So this is a little complex, but the idea is that basically we're not our thoughts, we're our actions. So when we're actually going about doing our things day to day, our thoughts are not ours. It's really, and I don't want to say fully not ours. I mean, I'm sure we do have genuine thoughts that are our own. It's just mostly, if you have like a thought to do something good, that's from an angel. And if you have a thought to do something bad, that's from a demon. Like for example, if you're driving down a road and God forbid you think of like, hey, I want to hit this truck head on, like a thought you never would have in a million years. It just, for some reason, you have this horrific thought in your head and you're like, wow, where did that come from? The idea from Swedenborg is that is a demon inside of you. It's enticing you. It's kind of like laying out some bait for you to do something evil. And if you actually do that evil thing, then you slowly kind of corrupt your soul in a sense. But you chose to do that. So now he does say that you have a soul currently, but the way I kind of interpret it is that you're kind of building your soul on this earth. Like the whole purpose of the material world is to build your soul, and you get help from other people inside of you, and then eventually you once you die, that's when your soul is actually truly born, and then you truly become your true self. At least that's how I interpreted it. But it's also kind of interesting, and I don't want to go on a tangent with this, but it's also kind of interesting because it makes me think of people who claim to be reincarnated. Like if angels and demons are inside of us and they're actually people, it does make me wonder, are these like these people who claim to be reincarnated, or they have these other stories, is that really them being reincarnated, or is that the people inside of them recalling their memories while they're inside of you and it's passing through you? Though that does counter some NDE experiences where people have seen aliens and they talked about soul harvesting, and we don't have to get into any of that. But I did want to throw that out there though, because that's such a fascinating little aspect to it.
Yeah, he excuse me, he has this he gets really into meditation as well. And one of the things that kind of was interesting for me is he goes on what they said was like, he describes as one journey, but it could have been multiples or the conglomeration of all of them. But he goes to like Mars and Mercury and all these different planets. But it was very interesting, even among that story, that he's astral projecting or meditating, going places, but he's also not communicating with the people of these planets. He's communicating with the ghosts that are on the planet.
Right. So I'll be honest, I don't have a definitive opinion on his work. You're talking about other planets or other Earths. There's a lot of different names for that work. And actually what that work is a compilation of different experiences he wrote in Arcana Celestia. Because while he's talking about the Bible, he just randomly talks about alien experiences he's had.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I first read it, I thought it was just literal, what you said, astral projection, and he was going to the other planets in our solar system and talking to aliens. Now, he did claim they weren't aliens per se; they were humans on other planets.
Yep.
Which, I found interesting because when you hear about people describing aliens, like the Greys or reptilians or Nordics, it's all humanoid beings. So I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting overlap between the two. But the more I read it and the more I talked to other Swedenborgians, it's like anything else Swedenborg, it's way more complex than that. Because there's a part where he brings up the ethereal sun. And again, he's talking to ghosts. So it actually might not be one-for-one astral projection. It might be something in the spiritual world where, he says when we die, we become part of Maximus Homo, the, God, the Lord. The idea is that we're actually not, that I guess to simplify it, the idea is that these are other planets. It's just in the other world, in the non-material world. And these are humans that did live on Earth, but they passed and they just became so far from Earth for whatever reason, either due to different political views, different morals or ethics. It's just like different reasons. Like, you put two people in a room and, they don't like each other very much. The idea with Swedenborg is when they die, they're not going to be next to each other. Even if both were really good people, they're not going to want to spend time with each other. So they'll be on different areas, or I guess in this case, different worlds. So it's so hard to really pinpoint his other Earth's work. Like, it's actually one of his most fascinating, because that was one of the ones he was most excited to actually talk about, or I should say write about, was the aliens.
Does that kind of, I don't want to cut you off, but does that kind of tie into, I've heard the Swedenborgism being compared to Mormonism as well, being like the comparison of the prophets and stuff. And now you're kind of comparing it to Mormons believe in like their what is it? Not treasure planet, but their afterlife planet.
Treasure planet. That's right.
Where we all get our own planets and stuff when we pass away. And that's kind of very similar to what you just described with Swedenborgianism is, if you don't like this one person, so you go to your own planet and you have that kind of thing. So it kind of follows along that trend a little bit.
It's funny you bring that up, because if you actually look at, there's a really famous Swedenborg YouTuber, Curtis Childs. He does Off the Left Eye. I'm sure you've seen some of his stuff.
No.
If you look at his comment sections, there's actually a lot of Mormons that watch his work. And they say, like, man, this relates so much to the LDS church and our beliefs. But it's kind of, I don't know if chicken or egg's the right term, but it's kind of like, I've seen the criticism from the Swedenborgian or secular lens that, Joseph Smith was familiar with Swedenborg's work before he founded the religion. So if you're looking at it from a skeptical point of view, you could just say he read some of Swedenborg's work and then he just took what he was interested in and kind of ran with it. Now, I know you could say the same thing about Swedenborg and his father with some of his beliefs and his interpretations of things, but that would be the counter people would have in terms of what Joseph Smith believed versus what Swedenborg believed. But there definitely is a lot of overlap. I even think don't quote me on this, but I even think the white clothes that the LDS wear, I even think that was inspired by Swedenborg. I heard that from a Mormon somewhere, that aspect was actually taken from Swedenborg's work, or at least that's a correlation between the two. But yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole you could go down. I know there are some videos on YouTube that really break it down, the similarities. Like, there's some members of the LDS that really like Swedenborg, and there's some that saw him as a heretic. And that's exactly the same for Christians as well. Like, Swedenborg was tried for heresy when he was alive, but his work was so dense that they gave up reading it. They looked at that and they're like, yeah, nah, just let him go. And plus, he had too many ties to royalty, where that would have looked bad on the kings. So they just let it go.
He couldn't publish his work in Sweden because it was heresy. So he published it, wrote it all in Latin and published it that way.
Right, yeah.
In other countries, so that it wasn't heresy. It was never published in Sweden at the time. But there's so much we can go into here. I just kind of want to give everyone a basis here. But let's wrap this up here into a little package if we can. And so now, years later, hundreds and years later now, all of his work is being looked at by these followers of what has become a religion. Now, there's, from what I've gathered, there's only like 1,000, maybe like 2,000 people that actually follow this religion.
I've heard estimates as to like 6,000. It's a small number. It's not many people. But I do know, if you look at other people like the Baha'i faith, I did a slight deep dive into that. There actually are some Baha'is that are familiar with Swedenborg's work, and they like reading about it. I know the Urantians. Are you familiar with them at all?
Mm-mm.
But we don't have to go. That's a whole other rabbit hole. But it was some. I'll briefly. It was channeled text that came out of Chicago by a guy named Sadler, who claimed to be given prophecy, or I should say, just a channeled text from a guy, sleeping prophet. We don't know who he was. And that's a whole rabbit hole. But anyway, they also, the followers of that, like Swedenborg's work as well. And I think they actually published the other planets, the other Earths one as well. But yeah, there are a lot of other different people of different religions that like Swedenborg's work, that look up to it. And even if they don't agree with it fully, they actually get a lot of substance out of it. And I really think it's just because what he describes is beautiful. It makes sense. And he just has really good ethics and morals to follow.
I had a question here on hold for you, but I think we just got it answered. But Lee wanted to know who came first, the Latter-day Saints or the why is Swedenborg? That is not how you spell that, Lee.
Oh, wait, let me see.
Swedenborg. I don't know anything about that, Lee. We're off topic, but I was gonna say Latter-day Saints was way after it. I wasn't sure when, but Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot,
that was like the 1800s.
Yeah, Swedenborg was the 1700s. 1688 to 1772 came way before the Church of Latter-day Saints, which was founded in 1830. He wrote about versions of spiritual realms decades before Mormonism began. Yeah, because I know that Mormonism started in the U.S., and the U.S. was definitely not around when Swedenborg was around. So
no, he actually passed away only a few years before 1776. Like 1772 was when he passed. So even
that is interesting because now correct me if I'm wrong, but the one podcast I was listening to said that he had a vision or a premonition or something of his one friend who really should come visit him, right? And so he calls up his friend and he goes, "Hey, I know you've been thinking about coming to visit me. You really should do this." And his friend says, "Well, I didn't, I have been thinking about it, but I wasn't, going to do it. I want to." And he goes, "Well, you need to hurry up and do that because I'm going to die on this date." And he's like, "Oh, no, I don't believe that. You're not going to die." And he did. Like he dies. He predicts his own death date as well, which I thought was just the icing on this cake. So,
yeah. I mean, there's so many, that's a whole other avenue we don't have time to get into. But yeah, he's predicted a lot of things, and there actually were a lot of people because he published his work anonymously at first, but once he got known, a lot of people were asking, "Hey, can you speak to my dead loved one? Can you talk to my relative?" And he kept having to turn them down. He's like, "No, I don't want to." Some people he'd be okay with and cool and would actually let them know what their relatives were saying. But, a lot of people, he turned them down. There was one case real quick where he was at some ball or party and he went to the balcony and he claimed that his house was going to be on fire. and he was miles and miles away from his house. He was very far from it. And it turned out, yes, there was a fire happening on his block, and they actually saved his house like just in time. And it's crazy. Like how would he have known that fire was happening? I mean, we know the fire was an accident. Like we know the fire wasn't like someone set it. So it's not like he paid someone to go out there and say. It's just another one of those weird things with him.
And there was another case of a lady nobility that asked him to, talk to her brother or something. And he came back and told her about this letter that she wrote to him that she hadn't told anyone about before he died. And he came back with this message from beyond from her brother, sorry. So,
yeah,
I don't know. So again, I tried to do this before, but let's tie this all up into a bow. So why is there this religious following now of him, and what is the whole premise behind that?
So I think the religious following today, it's mostly just people who already became Swedenborgian and then are born into it. I think, I don't know if that's cynical to say. I think it's just fair. But I think a lot of people are not necessarily converting to Swedenborgianism. I think it's just a lot of people who are already born into it. That's the most people that are into it. I think Swedenborg has kind of become kind of like, again, Urantia, or like some of these other channel texts, or like other weird mystics, where it's like, it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle that people are interested in. But I think when it comes to Swedenborg, people underestimate just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Like they look at him, they read some of his work, and they're like, okay, that's kind of interesting. That connects to this and this. But I think the more you dig into his work specifically, I think there's so much that ties into tons of other topics we could talk about. Like he really had a lot figured out, and it probably helped that, again, he mastered the sciences. So he really thoroughly knew what he was talking about, what questions to ask. When he visited the other planets, he asked the alien humanoids or whatever, he asked them questions about their spirituality over anything else. That was the first question he asked. What do you believe in God? What is your spiritual beliefs? So I think the only people that really would switch to Swedenborgianism nowadays, it either would be members of the LDS, or it would be like people that had NDEs or are familiar with near-death experiences. Because once you learn about that and you look at Swedenborg, it's very easy to go right into becoming a follower of Swedenborg. But I'm not sure there's actually been like an increase in actual believers of Swedenborg, which, I think if there were a lot more, the world would definitely be better off, just because of his morals and ethics, and because he focuses so much on doing well and good in the world.
Very cool. Lee is on a roll today. She says, Swedenborg, you will be assimilated. That's terrible. That is terrible, Lee. That is a Star Trek reference. You're showing your nerd, Lee. And I think I feel unfortunate that I showed my nerd that I got that reference. So yeah, it's all right. Resistance is futile. Awesome. Lee, we're on to you. All right. Lee also said earlier that I do not need to go down any more new rabbit holes. Lee, I will jump down whatever holes I want to. And all right. So we got a couple questions here I want to go back to. I don't know if this is so much a question, but a comment, and I'll let you address it. What if dreams we have are just us going into a different dimension, and when we come back to Earth, it goes back to normal?
Oh man, that's a very interesting one. I've thought about that too, and I think most people have, just because there's so many bizarre, interesting experiences people have had. The way Swedenborg describes his experiences in heaven and hell, again, I just told you about the two-headed turtle. What is that? And he intrinsically understood what that meant. And I feel like that's how we are towards our dreams. Our dreams are kind of like how AI, like it combines a bunch of different videos and what have you together to make something new. I feel like that's kind of what dreams are in our minds. But there's a correspondence to all the things we see in dreams. There is a deeper meaning, and it's for us to figure out what that meaning is. Again, if we remember the dream at all when we wake up. So,
why don't you think we remember dreams?
maybe we're just not meant to. I don't know. It's something that lingers in our subconscious. Like, you know, it's interesting how we can remember the feeling of a dream. Like we can remember what we felt, the emotion, the you know, that kind of aspect to a dream. But then we forget everything that actually happened in it.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's an aspect that Swedenborg I mean, obviously he does touch on dreams a little actually. But I think that's an aspect that really matches with near-death experiences. And oh, sorry, they're loud next door. I hope you don't hear that. I'm sorry.
Not right now, no.
But yeah, I think that relates a lot to like those near-death experiences and Swedenborg and what have you, in the way they describe deeper meanings with what they're seeing. I mean, obviously, there was one NDE I heard at the convention where she described seeing Jesus, and then she saw like a balcony, and then she saw this set of stairs, and the balcony and stairs she later remembered from being a part of what they purportedly discovered. What was it, like Jesus's tomb? There was like a big debate as to what that was. Anyway, when she saw pictures from that, it was what she saw in her NDE. So that was a correspondence between those two events. And then she looked for a statue of Mary, and that turned out to actually not be referencing Mary herself, but actually a lost sister of her mother's, who was also named Mary. So there's a weird connection there too. So it's very dreamlike, a lot of these experiences.
Kind of like how mediums describe seeing things that reference. So if I'm communicating with your grandmother, I would actually be seeing my grandmother, because that's how I interpret the feeling of the person coming through. So the Mary versus Mary kind of reference, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, before I did a deep dive into Swedenborg, I'll just be completely honest. I was very skeptical of like mediums. I was kind of like Mulder from X-Files. Like I was like, it just can't get behind. I don't know. But even though I hear cases all the time of them solving police reports and, you know, what have you, I was like, I can't bring myself to, it's just such an out there concept. And I don't understand when they're describing what they're seeing. I don't understand what they're actually seeing, how that works. But I was just kind of ignorant on the topic. And once I looked into Swedenborg, I gained a lot of respect for mediums. And actually, I'm a lot more open now than I was before towards that topic. Just because now there's so much that actually supports it, that connects to it. And it made me appreciate that whole, what would you call it, even like a subculture, or like a, I don't know what you would call it, but like media, it made me appreciate mediums more than I did before.
I'm with you there. Like I've always seen, you know, like, oh, you know, I don't, there are some mediums out there that I think are stretching and, you know, may not be
For sure.
legit. But I have definitely worked with like my team, Ellie Weisensell and Stephanie Lynn on my team, Angela Zabel, Christina Bloom, all that we've personally worked with here with CAPS. And there are more, but those are the ones that I'll bring up just 100%. Like Stephanie has told me things that there's no way she should know. She has described things in house to a T, and she's never been here, never seen pictures, you know, like anything like that. She's brought up stuff on investigations that there's no way she could have known about people on the investigations or locations or layouts of buildings. And it's absolutely phenomenal, the stuff that these people with these abilities can do. And supposedly we all have this ability if we open up to it. But
actually, it's funny. Christina Bloom was the first to give me my first reading.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember that. It was some holistic fair or something. I remember. Yeah. She told me that there's a group of Sasquatch that are trying to reach out to me from the Upper Peninsula. And that actually was kind of interesting, because I actually visited like months before that the Upper Peninsula. And I haven't talked about that to many people, but yeah, I actually went up there for a week vacation. And she just says, yeah, there's Sasquatch trying to connect to you from the Upper Peninsula. So I don't know.
See, there you go. It's a small world. It's really a small world. Once you start getting into this and traveling around and stuff, it's awesome. I have one more question here from Grandizer for you, and we will wrap things up here. Going back to your early days here with Coast to Coast, Grandizer would like to know, do you remember Coast to Coast AM would not cover the cryptid, the Popobawa? Way too horrible. I knew some who didn't want that negative energy, so they would not cover it.
Oh, I know nothing about this, but that sounds awesome. Why wait. Well, why wouldn't they cover it? Way too horrible? Was
Yeah,
it like can you read the chat? Can you like text in the chat or
Yeah, sure. Grandizer, if you're still listening, you want to elaborate on that? That was a while ago. I apologize, but we were on a roll there.
No, you're good.
The Popobawa isn't even like that bad. It's a flying reptilian dinosaur. You know, it's not like some of these other like there's the Aswang and stuff from the Philippines. Like everything from the Philippines is horrible, terrible, and scary, and wants to, you know, do bad things to you. But I don't know too much bad about the Popobawa.
Is it like is there some sort of like political thing like in that region why they can't talk about it? Or I really wonder why they wouldn't talk about that one. Now wait a minute. You said it's flying dinosaur, so I have to specify. It's just the like inner nerd. So technically, I mean, other than like Archaeopteryx and some birds, I know there technically weren't any flying dinosaurs. I know it was technically pterosaurs, which were flying reptiles. So was this like a pterosaur kind of thing? Like was it like, did it look like a species of like pterodactyl or like a pterodon? Like what? Because I actually don't know about this cryptid.
Okay, well, so this says it's also it's an evil spirit of Shitani, which is believed by the residents of Zanzibar to have first appeared in Tanzania island of Popobawa. But it is kind of a flying, like Mothman type cryptid looking thing.
Oh, that's a really weird one. Yeah. I'm gonna have to look into this now. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, there's
awesome.
So many stories and stuff that sometimes names don't always hit with me. But I remember there's a show called The Secret Saturdays, and it was a cartoon, and they had a Popobawa in there, and he was this flying dinosaur cryptid, and so that's why I remember the Popobawa. But
okay, dude, that show I liked that show. I remember that was like an obscure like Cartoon Network. I remember the I actually liked the marketing more than the actual show, to be honest. Like the early marketing was like it was, what was it, like found footage and this like weird cryptid imagery. I remember like, man, this would be awesome.
And they would go around and look for this stuff. Yeah, and there was this bad guy, and that was good times. Good times.
That was good stuff.
Popobawa is suggested. No, here, I'll pull this up. Why am I just reading it? Popobawa is suggested that is a demon, but in the flesh. You get that a lot in these cryptids nowadays.
Yeah.
I think that all goes. What is this? Hang on. There's another one here. It suggested that it's a demon. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like the local folklore and stuff. And I think, like, in my opinion, this is one of the creatures that could also be, like I said, related to the Mothman. And when you look at the Mothman legends and stuff, you also have that demonic harbinger of doom storyline and stuff along with it that's kind of grown up over time. And there's other creatures around the world that are very Mothman-esque as well. And I think this is just one of those creatures that kind of falls into that.
Yeah. I mean, I know Mothman was described more as like a bird too. It had like a beak. It was I know the term Mothman came from the Batman show, really, and then they just put that on a newspaper, and then that's what stuck with the public because it was just so enticing. Whereas before that newspaper, it was called a Birdman. Mm-hmm. So I actually met one of the. He wasn't a witness, but it was a guy that grew up in Point Pleasant. I went to the Mothman Festival this year to help out a couple of vendors. And the one guy they had sitting at their table who was there in Point Pleasant, he grew up with the Silver Bridge disaster. He was saying, there ain't no Mothman. It's just a Birdman. He was so angry when people would bring up Mothman. He's like, no, it's a Birdman.
That is
So,
awesome. Yeah, I got to
yeah.
go to the museum there a couple years ago and stuff as well, and they have all the original newspaper clippings, and there's just
Yeah.
bird, moth, and it's like just very interesting how all of a sudden everything just switched off from the Birdman, and yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
There's so much now the commentary section wants to head off. Lee wanted to know, have you ever had any Bigfoot experiences?
I wish. No. I haven't been squatching, if that's the acceptable term for it.
There we go.
I want to go look for Bigfoot. I'd love to. Either even if it's just like, 'cause I've heard some people, they go in the woods, it's like a psychic experience thing. I'd even be open to that. But yeah, I'd love to go and look for Bigfoot at some point in my life, even if it's just like once. That would hopefully we don't find a bear. That would kind of be bad. But I actually, in the Upper Peninsula, I'm pretty sure I ran into a bear at one point. I saw the dong and the scratch marks, and then I heard something big moving through the trees. So even though I know Bloom said that Bigfoot was contacting me, I think there was also a black bear that was hungry. So,
All right, we're gonna wrap this up so you can get going here, man. One last question. Grandizer again says maybe a part 2 of the stream. He wanted to know, have you ever done any extensive research into Aleister Crowley?
oh, that's interesting. So I'm a little new to Crowley, but I did buy that book, the Equinox book, the one that I think it was like his newspapers or his articles or whatever, like a collection of those. So I bought that. I bought some of his fiction. So I am preparing for like a deep dive, because Crowley. I mean, he kind of wasn't that great of a person, but I don't think he was a Satanist either. Because a lot of people, they say he was like this big Luciferian Satanist devil worshiper. I don't think that's accurate to Crowley. I think, I don't know if even Gnostic is the right term, but I would say he's more Gnostic than anything else. But I don't even think that's the right term, because he was like an alchemist. He was like so many different things. But yeah, I'm not too familiar with him, but I know the basic gist of Crowley.
That's a whole nother show. They even have named him for the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
So,
actually, when I was at the Mothman Festival, Steve Ward did a presentation, and he brought up Crowley and the Nessie. Obviously, that wasn't where Nessie began. It was centuries before. But I found it funny that he brought that up.
He opened the portal, and that's how Nessie got in. But
yep.
I don't know what that means. Mr. Barnaby, what went on in your head? Oh, Mr. Barnaby, did you talk to the dead? Oh, it's a song. Okay. No, I don't know.
Okay.
All right. That's it. Robert, thank you so much for coming on here. We talked a little bit about how you help out with Channeling Chavez podcast.
Yeah.
What else you got going on? Do you have any other events that you want to talk about, promote, or anything else? We do have the Swedenborg link in the show notes for people that are interested in going and checking out the actual religion, or whatever you want to call it. They can do that. But what else you got going on? Any events that's coming up? Any places you're talking or anything?
Nothing really as of late. I kind of went through all the big behemoths of the year, but obviously Channeling Chavez. We film every Thursday or Friday, and then we release a week afterwards. Obviously, there have been some hiatuses due to the IANDS conference and the Mothman Festival, but we are planning on getting regularly scheduled programming back. We're going to actually have Neil on this week, so that's going to be fun. And they're, I believe they're doing a tour next Friday. No, this Friday. This Friday they're doing a tour. So it's just going to. I think it's just going to like different cemeteries. But yeah. For the Swedenborg library that I linked, so I'm actually good friends with the owners of it. It's Del Rose and Quinn, and they kind of run it along with some other people, and they're all very kind people. If you want to know anything about Swedenborg and you're in the Chicago area, that's the place to go to. There is a Swedenborg church in Glenview as well, but I would recommend the Swedenborg library a little more, only because it's more personal. Like the church is an actual church, the library, you can actually sit with the people and discuss with them about Swedenborg's views. And Dell is very knowledgeable on tons of other religions and concepts as well. So like if you want anything occult, anything, he'll know it. So I would recommend going to the Swedenborg Library. I think they're open Wednesdays and Fridays, but I know sometimes their time's a little off because Dell travels around the world talking about what I talked about tonight, Swedenborg. But yeah, it's fun stuff. If I have anything going on, I'll let you know. But right now it's kind of on the low, other than Channel and Chavez.
Sounds good, man. Awesome. Well, we can give out a shout out to Paranormal Chicago, the Facebook group as well. You're part of that. Jack is part of that as well. If you're interested in any of the conventions or Neil Gibbons group as well, as you mentioned, his stuff is in there as well. All the paranormal stuff that's going on in Chicagoland area. So awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And I think you've unleashed some rabbit holes for our audience here to dive into, and hopefully they don't get lost and they can come back and, join us again. So
I hope so. Well, maybe a little lost before they come back. Just a little.
Get a little lost. Get a little lost. Otherwise, we haven't learned anything. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on, and thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care. All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Thank you guys all for tuning in and watching. Like, subscribe, and share all things here on the Untold Radio Network. And go check out Swedenborg and see if you want to join his church organization, whatever he's got going on. But with that being said, guys, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. And until next time, we will be back next week. Yeah, that's it. We will be live next week. So we'll see you then. Until then, guys, remember, we are all part of the paranormal spectrum. Take care, be well, and I'll see you next week.